Another day, another video of first aid by. Avoid the top 10 high potassium foods to avoid. First aid by. The amount of potassium in your diet can have a significant effect on your overall health. Eating too much potassium can lead to high blood pressure, kidney stones, and other health problems. Therefore, it is important to be aware of high potassium foods to avoid. In this video, we will discuss some of the most common foods that are high in potassium and how to manage them. We will also provide some tips on how to reduce your potassium intake and ensure your health is maintained. High potassium foods should be avoided or limited if you have been advised to do so by your doctor due to a health condition such as kidney disease, heart disease, or diabetes. Here are some high potassium foods to avoid or limit. Bananas. Bananas are one of the most popular fruits in the world, but they are also one of the highest potassium foods. It is important to be aware of the amount of potassium in foods if you are on a potassium-restricted diet. Too much potassium can increase the risk of developing kidney disease or other medical issues. Therefore, it is important to be mindful when consuming bananas and other high potassium foods. If you have kidney problems, it is best to avoid bananas altogether. Avocado. Avocado is a nutritious and delicious fruit, but it is also a high potassium food that some people should avoid. People with kidney disease or those taking certain medications should limit their intake of high potassium foods, such as avocado. People with kidney disease need to limit their potassium intake to help manage their condition and reduce the risk of further complications. Additionally, some medications such as ACE inhibitors can interfere with the body's ability to process potassium. Therefore, people taking these medications should consult their healthcare provider about the best way to manage their potassium intake, which may include avoiding high potassium foods such as avocado. Melons, cantaloupe, honeydew. Melons, such as cantaloupe and honeydew, can be a high potassium food to avoid, particularly for those with kidney disease or other conditions that require a low potassium diet. Potassium can build up in individuals with kidney disease, and consuming too much potassium can have serious health consequences. If you have kidney disease, it is best to avoid these types of melons and instead opt for lower potassium fruits such as apples, oranges, grapes, and berries. Mangoes. Mangoes are a delicious tropical fruit that is naturally high in potassium. Unfortunately, if you have kidney disease or other conditions that cause potassium levels to be too high, consuming too much mango can be dangerous. Therefore, it is important to be aware of your potassium levels and limit your intake of mangoes if they are too high. If you are unsure of your potassium levels, it is best to consult a doctor before consuming any high potassium foods. Oranges and orange juice. Oranges and orange juice are high in potassium and should be avoided by people who have kidney disorders or are taking certain medications such as ACE inhibitors, diuretics, and potassium-sparing diuretics. Too much potassium can be dangerous for people with certain health conditions. Other high potassium foods to avoid include bananas, avocados, potatoes, spinach, and tomato juice. People with kidney disorders should talk to a doctor or nutritionist about their potassium intake and other dietary restrictions. Prunes and prune juice. Prunes and prune juice are high potassium foods that should be avoided by those with kidney disease or who have been advised by a doctor to avoid high potassium foods. Prunes have very high levels of potassium, containing almost 700 milligrams of potassium per 100 grams serving, whereas prune juice contains about 500 milligrams of potassium per 8 ounces cup. Eating too many prunes or drinking too much prune juice can cause an unhealthy buildup of potassium in the body, which can be dangerous for those with kidney disease or other related medical conditions. In general, it is best to avoid high potassium foods such as prunes and prune juice if advised by a doctor. Tomatoes and tomato products, tomato sauce, tomato paste, ketchup. Tomatoes and tomato products such as tomato sauce, tomato paste, and ketchup are high in potassium and should be avoided if you need to limit your potassium intake. If you are on a low potassium diet, you should also avoid other tomato products such as tomato juice, canned tomatoes, and sun-dried tomatoes. Additionally, you should limit your intake of potatoes, spinach, and other high potassium foods. If you are unsure about the potassium content of food, it is best to ask your healthcare provider for advice. Potatoes, especially sweet potatoes. High potassium foods to avoid include potatoes and sweet potatoes. Potatoes are starchy vegetables that are very high in potassium, containing up to 941 mg per cooked cup. Sweet potatoes contain even more potassium, with up to 987 mg per cooked cup. People who need to limit their dietary potassium intake should avoid or limit their consumption of potatoes and sweet potatoes. Additionally, those with kidney problems should avoid eating large amounts of potatoes and sweet potatoes due to their high potassium content. Spinach. Spinach is a highly nutritious food and is often lauded for its high levels of vitamins and minerals. However, it is also a food high in potassium, a mineral that can be dangerous for those with kidney disease, as the body may have difficulty processing an excessive amount of potassium. It is important for those with kidney disease to be aware of their potassium levels, and to avoid foods high in potassium, such as spinach. For those with healthy kidneys, spinach can still be consumed in moderation, as long as it is balanced with other foods lower in potassium. Beans, white beans, kidney beans, lentils. Beans, white beans, kidney beans, lentils, are high in potassium and should be avoided if you are monitoring your potassium intake. These beans can have up to 600 mg of potassium per cup, so they should be limited or avoided if you are trying to keep your potassium levels in check. While beans are a great source of protein, fiber, and other essential vitamins and minerals, those with kidney disease or those on a potassium-restricted diet should be cautious about including too many beans in their diet. Instead, opt for low-potassium alternatives such as leafy greens, squash, and zucchini. Conclusion. It is important to monitor your potassium intake, especially if you have a medical condition that requires it. Avoiding high potassium foods can help keep your levels in a safe range. When in doubt, it is best to consult with a doctor or registered dietitian to ensure safe and healthy eating.